July 1985, Bob Geldof's two massive Live Aid concerts at London's Wembley Arena and Philadelphia's JFK Stadium raised more than $60 million for the starving of Africa. In New Zealand, Greenpeace protest ship Rainbow Warrior is blown up in Auckland Harbour. The French government admits responsibility. At his appeal in Rhode Island, Klaus von Bülow is found not guilty of attempting to murder his wife. While in North London, riots on the Broadwater Farm housing development result in the killing of a policeman. In the English county of Essex, just northeast of London, there is a small area that has seen no fewer than 18 murders in the last 40 years. The most widely publicised took place in White House Farm near Tulshunt, Darcy, on the 7th of August 1985. A young man, Jeremy Bamber, phoned the local police station to say he had just had a call from the farm that had frightened him. It was his father, Neville Bamber, who said, "Your sister's gone crazy and she's got the gun." Bamber's sister, Sheila, had a history of mental illness. There had been a shot and then silence. When the police broke into the house, they found 5 bodies. Neville Bamber had been shot and battered. Upstairs, they found the other 4. In their blood-stained beds were Sheila's 6-year-old twin boys, Daniel and Nicholas. Both had been shot several times. Daniel still had his thumb in his mouth. In the next room was 61-year-old June Bamber, outstretched on the floor, shot 7 times. Sheila lay nearby, with 2 bullets in her head, apparently put there by herself. The police found the weapon, an automatic rifle, on her chest, and assumed that the girl, already known to be mentally disturbed, had gone over the top, killing her parents, her children, and herself. The papers splashed the story of the 27-year-old model, nicknamed Bambi, who had killed her wealthy parents and her children. The police washed the blood off the walls and burned the bedclothes. At his parents' funeral, 24-year-old Jeremy, the one remaining member of the family, struck a tragic figure. He had specified cremation, and the service seemed a terrible ordeal for him. He appeared to burst into tears and staggered behind the coffins. He was supported by his girlfriend, Julie Mugford. The villagers of Tulshunt, Darcy speculated how the strikingly attractive girl they had seen grow up could have reached the depths of killing her own twins and her parents. They recalled the rumors of the fast life she had led as a model and whispered stories of drugs and paranoia. The Bambers had adopted her at 3 months through the Church of England Adoption Society. After she had been expelled from 2 schools, they sent her to Lucy Clayton's modelling agency. She learned to exploit her good looks and long legs, but she was temperamental, too moody and unpredictable to be a top model. Pregnant by another man, she married a potter, Colin Caffell. After a miscarriage and the birth of their twins, there was a breakup. She started having delusions of being Joan of Arc, the Virgin Mary, and a white witch. The police broke into her London flat and talked to people who knew her. They heard about attempts at suicide. The tragedy at White House Farm seemed an almost predictable ending to her story, but not to everyone. The Bamber's nephew, David Boutflower, couldn't believe that the Sheila he had known was capable of murder, or could even handle a gun competently. His sister, Christine, was equally skeptical of the official murder and suicide theory. Together, they went back to the house and searched it again. Christine remembered that as children they had all sometimes climbed into a window that appeared to be locked when they didn't want the Bambers to know they had been out. Meanwhile, David found the silencer for the fatal rifle. It was in the gun cupboard and was said to have had blood and a hair inside it. Outside, they tried the window and found it could easily be opened and closed to look as if it were secured. So someone could have got in and out again, leaving an apparently locked-up house. A month after the killings, on the 8th of September, there was a new sensation when Jeremy Bamber was accused of theft. He was taken to Malden Magistrates' Court and charged with stealing £980 from the offices of a caravan site. This was 5 months before the death of his father, who owned the site and had given him a small financial interest in the company in return for some help there. Now Jeremy was accused of staging a phony break-in of the offices. He was remanded and allowed out on bail, leaving the magistrate's court with his sweater pulled up to hide him from photographers. His solicitor revealed that while in custody, his young client had also been questioned about the deaths at White House Farm. At a further hearing, he was bailed again, and the police permitted him to go on a holiday abroad with a friend. They flew off to Saint-Tropez in the south of France for a fortnight of sun, food, drink and fun. But he didn't take his supportive girlfriend, Julie Mugford, after they'd had a row about another girl. On her own, and wrestling with her conscience, she went to the police. They jumped at the opportunity to question her without Jeremy Bamber nearby. When Bamber's ferry docked at Dover on the 30th of September, the police were waiting for him. The next day, they charged Jeremy Bamber with murdering all 5 of his family. Jeremy, like Sheila, had been adopted at the age of 3 months through the Church of England Children's Society. Sent off to boarding school, he felt rejected. He took his resentment out on younger boys and was regarded as a bully. Perhaps resentment festered as he thought his parents loved Sheila, now engaged to Colin Caffell, more than him. He worked on the farm, but at night he got up to whatever fun he could find locally when his chores were over. He was heard to complain about his parents and the wages he was paid, although they bought him a car, a house and land in the nearby village of Goldhanger. Locally regarded as arrogant and vain, Bamber was said to accentuate his good looks with eyeliner, and he had a stream of local girls at his cottage. Among them was Julie Mugford, who said she heard him hatch a plan to kill his parents and set fire to their house. But, she claimed, when Sheila became obsessed with religion and was hospitalized with a nervous breakdown, he formed a new plan. It was to lead him to the police court to be charged with 5 murders. He always maintained his innocence and never confessed. Outwardly confident, he remained smiling and convinced that his charm and looks would carry him through. And his sister certainly had been unhinged. She had taken to shrieking at the neighbors and telling her analyst that her twins were trying to seduce her, then kill her. With such an obvious alternative suspect, the police asked for a series of remands while they searched for solid proof against Jeremy. They tore his cottage apart in the pursuit of clinching evidence and postponed his trial for over a year. At White House Farm, they started again from scratch, going over every inch of the scene of the crimes. Ironically, they were hindered by the thorough cleaning up that the original investigators had given the farm months earlier. The trial of Jeremy Bamber finally began at Chelmsford on the 2nd of October, 1986. A High Court judge, Mr. Justice Drake, presided. Bamber secured the services of one of the country's leading solicitors, Sir David Napley. he briefed Mr. Geoffrey Rivlin QC as principal attorney for the defence. Leading for the Crown was another Queen's Counsel, Mr. Anthony Arledge, who set out the prosecution case, that this was murder for money, specifically for an inheritance of property and shares worth £436,000. At 10 o'clock on the 6th of August, Jeremy Bamber was said to have telephoned Julie Mugford and told her, "Tonight's the night." Then he bicycled to the isolated farm from his cottage by back roads so that he wouldn't be spotted. He arrived there between 1 and 2 a.m., used a hacksaw blade to let himself in through the defective window, unlocked the gun cupboard, and took out a .22 Anschutz automatic rifle he had often used to shoot rabbits. Neville Bamber probably heard a noise and came downstairs to investigate, arriving just as Jeremy had put the silencer on. Bamber was said to have taken aim and shot the man who adopted him in cold blood. As Neville Bamber sank to his knees, he stepped up to him and with shocking ferocity battered him with the gun, swinging it like a club. The blows were so hard that the stock broke. After pumping 4 further shots into the dying man, Jeremy went upstairs. June Bamber was reading the Bible in bed. He sprayed her with bullets. Now, said the prosecution, he moved to the next bedroom, where Sheila was sleeping. He put the muzzle under her chin, where a suicide might shoot herself, and pulled the trigger. Along the corridor, his nephews were asleep. He crept in and emptied 3 shots into little Nicholas and 5 shots into his brother Daniel. Mrs. Bamber, not quite dead, had crawled into Sheila's room. Mr. Arledge said that Bamber finished her off with a shot between the eyes. He shot Sheila again, but without the silencer. Then he set up the fake suicide, leaving the gun on her chest. He quit the house the way he had come in and got on the bicycle he had come on. He had left a fingerprint on the gun that was overlooked, along with 5 dead bodies behind him. At 3:26 a.m., he telephoned the police, but not on 999. He wasted time looking up the local station. He told them that when he had tried to call his father back, the line was engaged, but the phone at the farm was left dangling and still connected, so he couldn't have got another dialing tone. The prosecution claimed that another mistake overlooked at the time was that Bamber didn't take the natural action of rushing to the farm to see what was wrong. The 40-strong police contingent, which took some time to muster, overtook his car on the way to the house. He arrived after they did and told them, "My sister is a nutter. She has gone doolally. She has gone mad before." It was not until 7:30 a.m. that the police sledgehammered open the kitchen door and made their gruesome discoveries. They noticed how calm and collected Jeremy seemed at the appalling carnage. When he was joined by Julie, the police later stated that they even heard what sounded like a giggle as the couple whispered together. However, to the scene of the crime officer, Detective Inspector Ronald Cook, it seemed that a young mother with a long record of mental instability had gone over the top. As her brother had counted on, according to the prosecution, Cook assumed that what had happened was a pitiful domestic incident. In the witness box, Cook admitted jumping to the wrong conclusions, which led to his not wearing gloves when examining the gun, failing to look hard enough for the silencer, which was in the gun cupboard all the time, and losing the telltale hair on it when it was collected. Cook then testified that the fingerprints of both Jeremy and Sheila were on the rifle. David Boutflower, whose persistence had reopened the case, gave evidence next.
We were just hunting for a needle in a haystack.
And you found it?
We found it. We found it.
He told the court how much Sheila loved her children and that he had never believed that she could possibly kill them. She knew nothing about guns and how they worked. Sheila couldn't have fired 25 shots with deadly accuracy. For one thing, her hand-eye coordination was hopeless. She couldn't even put baked beans on toast without missing the toast. And how could the silencer have been in the cupboard if Sheila had shot herself with it on? The gun which Sheila had supposedly used was produced, along with the silencer that had had a hair, supposedly hers, on it. When the silencer was screwed on, the whole length was 36 inches, and her arms were simply not long enough to have reached the trigger with it on. A forensic scientist said she had tried holding the gun to her throat with the silencer on, but couldn't manage it. The jury left the courtroom under police escort to go to a nearby shooting range where they heard the gun being fired, with and without the silencer on. Then, on the 9th of October, Julie Mugford arrived to take the stand. Now the world heard her story of how Jeremy had spent months planning to kill his parents. He had abandoned his first plan to drug them and burn the house down because the insurance was too low. He had switched to shooting them, and implicating the sister everyone knew was a bit mad. She told of how he had phoned her at 3 a.m. to boast, "Everything is going well." Later, she repeated to a reporter what she had said about Jeremy in court.
It was the Christmas of '84 when he first started talking about it, and he had this intention of poisoning them and burning down the house. And I just disregarded what he was saying, really, because he used to say things to shock people. And I just followed up with a comment like, "Don't be so ridiculous, you can't burn down the house, it's far too big and people would see it anyhow." And that's how seriously I took him at that stage. I just dismissed it as idle chit-chat, really.
Julie claimed that she hadn't realized that Jeremy had actually gone through with his plan until the police came to collect her.
Then at 6 o'clock in the morning, when the police came to pick me up, that was when I first realised that there was something seriously wrong. And my worst fear was that it was Jeremy that had done something.
But she was asked, with the knowledge she had, why didn't she go to the police immediately or tell somebody that she suspected that Jeremy was responsible?
Basically because the police had been round and they'd spoken to Jeremy, saying that things were as they looked and that it was 4 murders and a suicide. And I didn't think that at that stage anyone would believe me, because it was obvious I was terribly shaken up about the whole affair. And Jeremy was also so terribly confident that nobody could do anything about it, that he said there was nothing I could do anyway. There was nothing I could have done to have stopped it, and there was nothing I could do now. I was very upset at the funerals because I had this thought in my mind about Jeremy doing all this, and he was there breaking down, supposedly, while I was there actually upset, feeling his guilt for him. Although he lost his legs and sort of buckled under a bit, there was no actual tears when he was supposedly crying. And as soon as we got into the car, he started joking again. As I kept on saying to him that I had to say something and I couldn't keep this in and questioning him, he became frightened of me, which is what made me become frightened of him, because he obviously was getting quite nervous about the fact that I wasn't prepared to just cover him, if you like, anymore, because my conscience wouldn't let me. I couldn't let Sheila go through anymore.
Another damning piece of evidence was a statement that when she arrived at the farm, he had whispered, "I should have been an actor." But Bamber shed tears in court when a letter was read from his mother marked, "Not to be opened until my death." It said, "I write to thank you for all you have given me." A Home Office pathologist, Dr. Peter Van Essex, said that Neville Bamber had been shot 8 times, 4 times in his skull after he had already been immobilized by a savage beating with the butt of the gun. Under cross-examination, Dr. Van Essex accepted that Sheila had no marks that indicated if she had been attacker or victim. but he said her wounds showed that she would have been disabled by the first shot of the 2 shots, so she could not have shot herself for the second time. Ballistics specialist Malcolm Fletcher testified that there would have been residue of bullet lubricant left on her hands if she had really fired the 25 shots. There wasn't. He too testified that Sheila was not tall enough to have managed to shoot herself with the silencer screwed on. Julie had testified that Jeremy had told her he had paid a mercenary, Matthew MacDonald, £2,000 to commit the murders. MacDonald said he was a plumber, not a mercenary. A false rumour had got about. He had been at home that night. Mr. Geoffrey Rivlin's case for the defence denied that Jeremy had committed the murders. Sheila Caffell had been solely responsible. He called a psychiatrist, Dr. John Bradley, who said that Sheila had a delusion that she was possessed by the devil. She believed she had the power to create evil, and her children had it as well. He quoted other cases where women had killed their children and then attempted suicide. They had had the idea that some catastrophe was about to befall their offspring, and one of them had thought she was so inadequate a mother that it was unfair on her children to go on living. Sheila may have felt the same. On the 16th of October, 1986, Bamber gave evidence on his own behalf. He continually smiled at the jury, which included 5 women. He insisted that he had a loving relationship with his parents and accused Julie of making up stories out of spite because they'd had a row and split up. When prosecuting counsel said that it was he, Bamber, who was not telling the truth, Jeremy answered, "That is what you have got to establish," reminding the jury that he was entitled to the benefit of any doubt. On the night of the murder, he stated that he was at home watching television. After he went to bed, he was woken up by his father's phone call for help. Jeremy insisted that Sheila was the murderer, saying she wanted to go to heaven, she wanted to take people with her, and she wanted to save the world. In his final speech, Bamber's counsel asked if he would have dared call the police if he really had been the murderer. The prosecutor replied that Bamber's fatal mistake was the phone call. He wanted the police to come to prove he wasn't at the farm. Summing up, Mr. Justice Drake asked the jury to consider 3 key questions. 1. Did they believe Bamber or Mugford? 2. Could Sheila be the killer? 3. Did Neville Bamber ring Jeremy? The jury reported a disagreement among themselves, and the judge said he would accept a majority verdict. By 10 votes to 2, they found Bamber guilty of all 5 murders. The judge sentenced him to life 5 times over, to serve at least 25 years. There was an inquiry into the conduct of the police, and the Home Secretary admitted that they had made mistakes. Bamber's application for a full appeal hearing was turned down in 1989. David Boutflower was asked how he felt.
It's very sad. Just
Very sad?
The feelings of relief and a lot of sadness.
Why sadness?
Because no one wins. We all lose. Can't bring them back.
And Julie Mugford? Did she still feel any affection for the man she had loved?
I feel something for him, but I just think he's a very sad man.
In December 1993, Jeremy Bamber was still insisting on his innocence and was waiting to hear whether a new appeal based on fresh evidence would be allowed.